When Hunter Ben first spotted the massive bear, he was thrilled. He figured if he could bring it down, the thick fur alone would fetch a good amount of money. But strangely, as he aimed his rifle, something made him hesitate. Instead of shooting, Ben reached for his tranquilizer gun and decided to take the bear to a local vet for an ultrasound. The vet took one look at the scan and immediately called the police. That's when things started to feel off. Ben was confused. What could possibly be so wrong with the bear, and why had he suddenly decided not to shoot it in the first place? Ben felt betrayed. This wasn't some high-end clinic. He had chosen this specific vet for a reason. The guy was known to keep quiet for a little cash on the side. That's why Ben had brought the bear here. Furious, he nearly snapped, ready to knock the vet out cold. But the vet held up his hands and explained that the police weren't coming to arrest Ben. Something was seriously off with the bear, and the ultrasound proved it. This wasn't just a case of a wild animal overeating. The vet had never seen anything like it before. He knew right away that he had to get the authorities involved. When the police finally arrived, Ben realized something surprising. They didn't even seem to care about him. In fact, they barely asked how the bear got there. All their attention was locked on what the vet had found in the scan. Whatever it was clearly a big deal. But what exactly had the vet seen in that ultrasound? And why had Ben suddenly lost the urge to shoot the bear at all? None of this was making sense. Ben had hunted his whole life, but this bear was different. The longer he looked at it, the more uneasy he felt. For the first time ever, he couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger. At first, Ben thought maybe the bear was pregnant, but that idea was quickly ruled out the moment he saw a very clear sign of male anatomy hanging beneath the animal's hind legs. So the mystery behind the bear's enormous size had to be something else entirely. Still curious, Ben chose to quietly follow the bear. Keeping his distance, of course. He was sure the bear had already noticed him. They'd made eye contact more than once, but the animal didn't seem to care. Maybe it didn't see Ben as a threat, or maybe it just wasn't worried. As he tracked the bear, Ben kept running through his options. He wasn't just following it out of curiosity about its strange size. He knew he wouldn't find answers without getting up close. But then another idea crossed his mind. If this bear really was unique, it might be worth a lot of money to the right buyer. And Ben happened to know a few people who'd pay big for something rare. It felt like the perfect plan to make some serious cash. But there was one major problem. How on earth was Ben supposed to catch a bear this huge? He knew there was no way he could do it on his own. Luckily, he didn't have to. Ben had plenty of hunting buddies who would jump at the chance to help if there was some money in it for them. While still trailing the bear, Ben quickly set up a group chat with a few friends. Together, they started working out a plan. 3 of them would drive out to meet him, bringing along a truck big enough to carry the massive animal. Finding a vehicle like that wasn't going to be easy, and getting it through the forest would be even harder. But thankfully, there were enough narrow roads nearby to make it possible. They also planned to bring a set of tranquilizer darts strong enough to knock the bear out. While Ben waited for the crew to arrive, he got lucky. The bear had finally settled down to rest near the entrance of a small cave. And even better, there was a road leading right up to it. Ben could almost see the money stacking up in his head. About an hour later, his friends pulled up with everything they needed, and the bear was still sleeping. Of course, they still had to hit it with the tranquilizers before moving it, but at least the bear wasn't going anywhere. With it lying still, there was almost no chance of missing the shot. They quickly fired 3 darts into the animal, but to their shock, the bear instantly woke up. It looked around, clearly furious, and the moment it locked eyes on the group, everything changed. This wasn't the calm, uninterested bear from earlier. It exploded into a charge, heading straight for them. They froze for a second. None of them had expected this. 1 dart was usually more than enough to put a bear down, but this beast didn't even flinch. Panic took over, and everyone bolted in different directions, scattering through the trees. But the bear didn't care about the others. It was locked on Ben. He took off running, heart hammering in his chest. With no time to think, he scrambled up the nearest tree, praying the bear was too big to follow. As he climbed, he felt the whoosh of claws swiping just inches from his back. He gripped the tree for a dear life. Down below, the bear prowled in circles, its massive body casting a dark shadow on the forest floor. Ben's breath came fast and shallow, cold air mixing with rising panic. How had a simple hunting trip turned into this nightmare? Every growl felt like thunder in his chest. He didn't dare move. The tree creaked slightly beneath him, but he held tight. His thoughts raced to his friends, still hidden in the truck. Were they thinking of helping him, or were they too frozen with fear? The woods around him were suddenly quiet, except for the occasional rustle of leaves and the heavy breathing of something far too big to ignore. In sharp contrast to the chaos of the chase, the bear's wild pacing slowly began to ease. Its deep growls faded into heavy, steady breaths. From his perch in the tree, Ben watched closely, hopeful but still on edge. Then, with a final huff that sounded almost annoyed, the bear turned and wandered off into the dense underbrush, disappearing from view. Ben didn't move. He stayed frozen, barely believing his luck. The danger had passed for now, but his hands were still shaking. That had been too close. He waited, taking slow, steady breaths to calm himself before beginning to climb down. Every branch felt vital. Every shift in weight was careful. When his boots finally hit the ground, a wave of relief swept through him, but he knew better than to relax completely. He had to get to the truck. He crept toward it, moving fast but quietly. As he neared, his friends came out from hiding, their faces a mix of worry and relief. No time for hugs or long talks. They needed answers. "What happened out there?" one of them asked. Ben just shook his head and climbed into the truck. Inside, the tension was thick. "That didn't go how we thought," Ben said, still trying to catch his breath. His friends nodded, looking grim. They had clearly underestimated just how tough this bear really was. It was time to come up with something smarter. "We're not giving up," one friend said firmly. They spread out maps and started brainstorming new ideas. Every suggestion was carefully picked apart. The mood shifted from fear to determination. Then Ben spoke up. "What if we don't hurt it? Just capture it." They stared at him. That wasn't what they'd expected to hear. But after what he'd just gone through, something had changed in him. This bear wasn't just a target anymore. It was something rare, powerful, and maybe even worth respecting. "It's risky," one of them said, "but maybe it's our best shot." The idea caught on. They began to talk differently now, less like hunters, more like problem solvers. One friend raised the question out loud. "Are we doing the right thing? Should we even mess with nature like this?" They weighed the danger to themselves and to the bear. The discussion wasn't easy, but it was real. "We have to make sure it's safe," Ben said, more certain than ever. His voice carried more than just worry. It carried responsibility. They agreed. No guns, no harm, just a clean, safe capture. A few calls later, they had new equipment, stronger tranquilizer darts, made for larger animals. The supplier sounded confident. "These will do it," he said. They loaded the darts carefully, knowing each one carried the weight of their whole plan. Then they tested the tranquilizer guns, double-checking every piece. There wouldn't be a second chance. The plan came together step by step. They'd come at the bear from different sides, using the forest's natural cover to their advantage. "We've got to be quick and quiet," Ben instructed. He'd stepped into a leadership role without even realizing it. Every detail was planned. The bear's likely reactions, their timing, and how to get out fast once it was down. When the moment came, they moved through the woods like shadows, hearts pounding in their chests. The peaceful forest around them was a sharp contrast to the intensity in their minds. Every footstep was slow and careful. They reached the bear's new resting spot. It was calm, completely unaware. Ben led the way. He held up a hand for silence. No one made a sound. This was it. He raised the tranquilizer gun. It felt heavy, not just in weight, but in what it meant. He took a breath, aimed, and pulled the trigger. The dart hit. A wave of relief moved through the group. They let out quiet sighs, their nerves easing just slightly. They'd done it. At least they hoped they had. The bear reacted, just barely. Its movements were slow and heavy, a clear sign that the tranquilizer was working. It was a big moment, proof that all their careful planning and teamwork had paid off. From a safe distance, the group watched closely, making sure the drug was doing its job but not causing harm. It was strange to see such a powerful creature slipping into a calm, quiet sleep. Everyone spoke in hushed voices, their tone filled with respect for the animal. It was clear they were all feeling the same thing, a mix of awe and responsibility. They'd done it. The tension eased, and the group allowed themselves a few quiet celebrations, a couple of smiles, a few pats on the back. "We did it," someone whispered, half amazed, half proud. Ben stood there, looking at the bear, a deep sense of achievement settling over him. This had felt impossible not long ago, but here they were. Still, he knew they weren't finished yet. Now came the hard part, moving the bear safely without causing it harm. They studied the bear's massive frame, working out how to transport it properly. "We need to be careful," Ben reminded them. They pulled out the tarp and ropes, and everyone moved with quiet focus, working like a true team. Every step they took was with the bear's safety in mind. Then came the heavy lifting. Getting the bear onto the truck was no easy task. Each person took their spot and braced themselves. The weight was incredible, dead weight and awkward to manage. They grunted and strained, sweat beading on their brows, but little by little they managed to move it. With a final effort, the bear was hoisted into the truck bed. They stepped back, breathing hard, glancing at one another with tired smiles. It had taken everything they had, but they'd done it. Now they had to keep it hidden. They unrolled a large tarp, covering the bear carefully, tucking the sides in and tying it down tight. This wasn't just about protecting themselves, it was about protecting the bear too. They couldn't afford attention right now. The truck's engine rumbled to life, the sound low against the quiet of the woods. Driving through the narrow forest paths wasn't easy. The driver focused hard, dodging potholes and ducking low branches. Inside the truck, everyone sat in silence. Each bump and turn reminded them of the heavy, breathing creature in the back. It felt like the longest drive of their lives. Every second stretched with tension, but once they got out of the forest and onto open road, things smoothed out. The truck rolled steadily forward. Ben kept checking the rearview mirror, making sure the tarp hadn't shifted. No one else spoke. They were deep in thought, their minds on what came next. Finally, they arrived at the vet's secluded building. It was plain and quiet, standing alone like a small outpost in the wild. They parked carefully, checking the area to make sure no one was watching. Getting the bear inside without drawing attention would take focus. They readied themselves to lift again, the mood shifting back to serious. They were almost there, but the real mystery was still waiting. The vet, a rough-looking man with tired eyes, looked the bear over warily. "Never seen one this big," he muttered, clearly intrigued. He hesitated, but curiosity was already pulling him in. Ben explained why they'd come and asked for an ultrasound. The vet nodded slowly, already shifting into work mode. Despite his earlier doubts, the vet's whole attitude had changed. Inside the small makeshift exam room, he readied the equipment. The bear, still under the tranquilizer, lay motionless on the floor, its size even more intimidating up close. The team helped slide the ultrasound machine into place. Everyone moved with care, but the air was thick with tension. What were they about to find? Was the bear just unusually large, or was there something deeper going on? No one spoke, but the questions hung heavy in the room. As the vet began the ultrasound, his brows drew together. He moved the probe slowly, his eyes locked on the screen. Then he froze. "There's something here," he said, his voice low but sharp. This isn't normal." Everyone leaned in, faces shifting from curiosity to concern. On the screen, a strange shape appeared, something clearly not part of the bear's natural body. The room fell silent, the sense of victory from earlier completely gone. The vet stepped back, staring at the image. His face was hard to read, somewhere between disbelief and alarm. "I need to make a call," he said suddenly, then walked out without waiting for a response. Ben and the others exchanged tense looks. What had they just stumbled into? The silence was thick, no one sure what to say. The vet was speaking on the phone just outside, his voice urgent and quiet. "We need the authorities," he said before hanging up. Ben's stomach dropped. This was never part of the plan. Police involvement could ruin everything. "You didn't have to do that," Ben said, trying to keep calm, but the vet stood firm. Whatever he'd seen on that screen, it wasn't something he could ignore. Moments later, the distant sound of police vehicles approaching only added to the weight in the room. Ben's nerves were shot. What if they were accused of something serious? The officers arrived quickly, stepping out of their vehicles with focused expressions. Ben's chest tightened as they neared. Were they in trouble? He stepped forward, trying to explain. "We found the bear in the woods," he began, but one officer raised a hand gently. "We're here about the animal," he said simply. Just like that, Ben's fear of arrest eased, but was replaced by a strange, growing curiosity. The officers weren't interested in the team at all. Their eyes were locked on the bear. Inside, they gathered around the ultrasound monitor. "What exactly did you find?" one asked the vet. He pointed to the strange shape on the screen. Everyone leaned in. The officers looked puzzled, even concerned. Clearly, this was unlike anything they'd expected to deal with today. The room filled with quiet murmurs. "Could it be a tumor?" one friend offered. "Or something it swallowed," another added. The police didn't say much. They just watched and listened, their faces giving little away. The longer they stared at the screen, the more the mystery grew. After a brief quiet discussion among themselves, one officer finally spoke. "We're going to have to look deeper," he said. "We'll need to perform a procedure." Ben felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief. They weren't being blamed for anything, but also anxiety. What were they about to uncover? The bear's journey clearly wasn't over, and now they were all in the middle of something much bigger. In the small exam room, time seemed to slow. Ben and his friends sat waiting while the police spoke quietly among themselves. Every now and then, one of them would glance toward the bear, then go back to the conversation. No one said much. Every minute felt heavier than the last. They all knew something important was about to happen. Finally, the vet spoke up. "It's a man-made object," he said, tapping the screen. The group leaned in again, eyes wide. That single sentence sparked a flood of questions, none of which had easy answers. How did it get inside the bear? And what exactly was it? The police looked just as puzzled as everyone else. Their usual serious expressions had been replaced with visible curiosity. The room buzzed with quiet conversation and rising tension. Ben felt the same, drawn in by the mystery, but also starting to feel uneasy. His friends whispered among themselves, tossing out guesses, each one more far-fetched than the last. The longer they waited, the heavier the moment became. Everyone wanted answers, but no one knew what to expect. The vet began setting up for the extraction. "We need to be extremely careful," he warned, laying out his surgical tools. The officers nodded, fully aware of how delicate this was. Ben watched closely, that growing sense of responsibility still sitting heavy on his shoulders. This was no longer about a rare catch. It was about doing the right thing. Everyone was ready now. The operation wasn't just a medical procedure anymore. It felt like they were stepping into something completely unknown. As the vet started the surgery, the room fell silent. All eyes were on the bear. The vet moved with careful precision, completely focused. Ben and his friends hardly breathed. The tension was thick, hanging in the air like a held breath. This was it, the moment they'd all been waiting for. Whatever the truth was, they were about to find it. The vet worked with complete focus, sweat beading lightly on his brow. The bear, still unconscious, breathed steadily. The vet's hands moved with steady control, and the whole room watched, caught between awe and worry. No one dared speak. They all knew how important each step was. The silence in the room wasn't just about respect. It was about the weight of the unknown. The vet's every movement felt like a countdown. Ben could feel his own heartbeat. His hands were tight fists, knuckles white. This animal's fate, and possibly the answer to a much larger puzzle, was in the vet's hands now. Finally, after what felt like forever, the vet paused. His hands lifted carefully. In them, he held a small device. "It's a camera," he said. The words hit the room like a shockwave. Everyone stared. A camera? The disbelief was instant. Murmurs spread as the team leaned in for a closer look. How could something like that end up inside a wild bear? But now the pieces began to fall into place. The odd size, the strange ultrasound, it all suddenly made sense. The bear had been carrying this thing for who knows how long. As the realization sank in, relief flooded the group, but so did guilt. Had their actions made things worse for the bear without realizing it? No one said it out loud, but the question was there, hanging between them. The officers looked at one another, their faces shifting from confusion to understanding. This wasn't just a strange wildlife case anymore. It was something much bigger and much more unusual. After the initial shock faded, Ben and his friends pulled into a quiet corner of the room. They were still processing what had just happened. "What does this mean for the bear?" one of them asked. No one answered right away. They just stood there, letting the weight of it all sink in, knowing that whatever came next, nothing would be the same. The focus had shifted. No longer driven by excitement or victory, the group now felt a heavy sense of responsibility. What started as a hunt had turned into something much bigger, something they never could have predicted. Their story was now tied to the bears, and there was no undoing that. In the quiet that followed, Ben sat alone, deep in thought. The more he thought about it, the more it hit him. Their choices, their curiosity, even their greed, had played a part in the bear's suffering. That camera hadn't just caused the bear pain, it had brought them face to face with the consequences of their actions. It was a sobering moment. Surrounding the still recovering bear, the group came to an agreement without even needing to debate. Selling the bear? It wasn't even on the table anymore. That idea had faded the moment they saw what the animal had been through. What mattered now was making it right. Together, they began planning the bear's return to the wild. Every detail mattered, finding the safest place, making sure the bear was healthy, giving it the best possible chance at a normal life. The conversations were practical, but filled with a new level of respect. They no longer saw the bear as a trophy, but as something far greater. As preparations got underway, the group moved with quiet purpose. Everything they did was for the bear's comfort and safety. Ben took the lead again, but this time it wasn't about control. It was about care. His actions reflected the change inside him. The drive back into the wild was thoughtful. The roads that once carried hunters now carried guardians. The group didn't talk much, but the silence spoke volumes. They all felt the same. This was their chance to set things right. When they reached the chosen spot, they gently opened the enclosure. The bear stepped out slowly, its massive form moving carefully into the familiar trees. For a long moment, it paused. Then, without looking back, it disappeared into the greenery. No one said a word. It was a quiet, powerful moment. Seeing the bear return to its world reminded them all of nature's strength and its vulnerability. The silence wasn't just respect, it was reflection. On the way back, the group finally opened up. They talked about everything, the strange twists, the lessons, the way this experience had turned their expectations upside down. It had started as a simple hunting trip. Now it felt like a journey that had changed them all. Ben especially had a lot to think about. The camera, the bear's condition, and everything that followed. It all forced him to look at the wild in a different light. He had always seen himself as a hunter. Now he understood the need for balance. The wild wasn't just a place for sport. It was something to protect. That understanding went deep. He knew this moment had reshaped how he'd approach the outdoors from now on. It wasn't about domination anymore. It was about respect, about knowing when to act and when to let nature be. As the bear vanished into the forest, it felt like the right ending, not just to the trip, but to a chapter in all their lives. For Ben and his friends, this wasn't a loss or a win. It was a turning point. And the bear? Once a target, now a symbol of something far more meaningful. Thanks for being part of this incredible story. If this journey moved you too, don't forget to share the video, hit the like button, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.